Hey, deserving listeners, The Ultimatum on Netflix. Let's watch.
So I'm gonna spill.
Oh my gosh, what's been going on?
It's been crazy. So last night I went through Colby's little watch and saw he'd been texting this girl about how we have an open relationship. Yeah, just all like sexual conversation for almost 3 weeks.
Okay, so that is much different than the way they were talking about it earlier. She's saying that well into the time that Colby was with April. Well, still, is that okay? Did they just not talk about it? Was it reasonable for Colby to believe, yeah, I am with Madeline, but we're going through this period right now because we're on a reality TV show of a month where I'm able to date other people? And was it reasonable for Colby to interpret that as not only can I date April, but I can date whoever I want? That certainly wasn't talked about on the show. So that's a major question. You know, if Colby interpreted it that way, was it reasonable? Or was it clear that that was not okay, but Colby did it anyway because he's a dirtbag cheater and he doesn't care about other people's feelings? I don't know. So, but that is different because I thought it was just that he dated a couple women during those few days when they were supposed to be dating other cast members. But she's saying that I saw evidence of multiple weeks of him talking to someone else and flirting and having a romantic sexual relationship with someone. So, yeah, so I still don't really know. I'd have to have more information, but it's certainly very possible that Colby lied and was manipulative or something, lying not only by omission to Madeline, but maybe even lying to the other person that he was flirting with. So, but I just don't have enough information.
And then he ended up leaving. Like he just dipped out and like has been like non-responsive.
That isn't how I would describe it. I would describe it as she locked herself in the bathroom and wasn't wanting to talk with him about it anymore and was calling him a loser, and then he left. Was it advised that he leave? You know, probably not if you wanted to work on the relationship. She just painted it like, I found this out and then he just bounced, as if that is an accurate description. Now, if we hooked her up to a lie detector test, which doesn't exist, but if we did, there's a possibility that she would actually pass, that's how she remembers it, because we tend to remember things through our emotional lens and our self-centered lens. So she might not be intentionally phrasing it in a way that not everyone would phrase it in that way.
Told him how important it was, like that we just had a talk today, but I've called him 3 times now and he's like nowhere to be found.
If he wants to work on the relationship, which I assume he does because he's been saying he loves her and wants to marry her, he was caught in at least you would think if you're Colby, you're like, well, Madeline is hurt by that, and it was reasonable for Madeline to believe that I wasn't supposed to be able to do those kinds of things, or at the very least, it would be reasonable for Madeline to be threatened by that because I so easily just started dating other people, like how easy that was for me. You know, that would be, of course, concerning to Madeline. So the fact that he doesn't exhibit more care around that, I don't know what that says, but we can say that. And then for him to just leave, because it's not like she kicked him out of the house or anything. He was feeling rejected and insulted and accused, and then he just disappears. And then the next day isn't responding to her. So what does that tell us? Does that say that he is majorly questioning the relationship and needs time to think? Is it a passive aggression of, how dare you call me out? I'm going to passively aggressively, I'm going to be hidden in my hostility towards you by not answering your phone calls. I don't know.
Colby has never talked to another woman like that. He's never kissed another girl. We don't even go out to clubs. And he did cut things off with her. He was like, no, I am with Madeline. I want to be with Madeline. Like, cut things off before I even found anything.
Okay.
But he apologized and in the next breath said, but I did that because of you. He can't ever be wrong. It's affecting me.
So she's saying, I saw in the text that he said to the other woman, we're done, I'm now with Madeline. But when I confronted Colby about this, he said it was because of me. So I don't understand what that was about. Maybe we'll find out.
Fuck.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It's not. I need him to be here. And it's just like another slap in the face that he couldn't even just stick around and talk it out with me.
That makes total sense. You would think that your partner would at least try, or at the very least just call or text and say, I'm going through something right now, I'm really sorry. We can talk later about this, but I just can't right now. I'm just hanging out at my mom's house or something. But to just completely go off the grid during this time, yeah, it would be very reasonable to be hurt by that. But we don't know what he's going through. Maybe we'll find out.
But he wants to marry me. Maybe not anymore. I don't know. Hey, Colby.
I've been addressing people's accusation that Colby is a gaslighter by using other words that we might use in the clinical world, which it's possible that he's trying to manipulate Madeline by ghosting her for a day, trying to exert power over her, trying to send her a message that, how dare you call me out? I will make you feel rejected, so it'll make you question your accusation of me. Maybe, that would be a reasonable hypothesis to add to the list of hypotheses. There's not a lot of evidence of that, but, it would be something to consider. But that's not gaslighting. Could it develop into gaslighting over time? If they went down a certain road and say they're married 5 years from now and Colby is regularly stepping out on her and hurting her feelings, and then he's just like very calm in his way, belittling in his way, disappears for a few days as a way of trying to say, you better not do that again. And then he comes back and he's just like, I don't know what the problem is. Like, this is all about you. You made me do this. If that happens over time and Madeline doesn't have people that she can get support from, she starts to isolate, he starts to isolate her, then that's gaslighting.
You're awesome.
See you, Ray.
See ya.
I think we really need to discuss last night and where we're at right now.
I think we should too. I just don't think right now is a good time to do that for me.
I get that you're tired, but I'm exhausted.
I can hardly even hold my eyes open.
This is something that a lot of couples will run into, where there is a reasonable and healthy desire to talk about something, to work it out, and one or both individuals are saying, I'm too tired, I just can't deal with it right now. And it depends, but generally speaking, if someone is saying they're tired and they can't deal with it, they should be allowed to rest so that they can face it head on. It's not an emergency. They are talking about getting married and spending the rest of their lives together. Certainly this conversation can wait until tomorrow. Now, I understand from her perspective, it feels very urgent for sure, but it's, reasonable or possible that it sounds like he was out all night drinking. So what's the chance that he could even really retain what's happening or understand or be constructive? Because it takes a lot of energy to be in a constructive conversation when there's a lot of risk of destruction, because you have to constantly edit yourself so you don't head down a road of destruction. And it is something that the Madelines of the world should consider, of just like, okay, well, I really want to talk about it right now. Now, it's reasonable to say, well, when do you want to talk about it? Because I do want to talk about it. And then the Colbys of the world should say something like, well, I too want to talk about it for sure, but I think I need some rest. I need a nap. And maybe afterwards we could talk about it. And I actually recommend that people allow for that possibility for a number of reasons, for this reason, but also for sometimes you're just really in a bad mood. I mean, we all have moods, right? And so imagine you're in a really bad mood because of work or whatever, and you know that if you head into a conversation that involves tension with another person, with your partner, there's a pretty good likelihood that your mood is going to make you very easily triggered and very hostile, and you just know, I just can't do this right now. So it's functional, because it's hard to regulate one's mood in that situation, to say, I'm in a really bad mood, we can't talk about it right now. But the key is that you can't just say, I don't want to talk about it right now, period. You are responsible for saying, I don't want to talk about it right now. Let's talk about it tomorrow. You want to offer that up, because if you just say, I don't want to talk about it right now, and you don't offer another time, then the other person is like, well, are we ever going to talk about it? So you need to be, but it takes some effort to be able to say that, to say, I don't want to talk about it right now. It takes some effort to go, okay, but I need to have compassion, and I also need to face the fact that we do eventually have to talk about this, even though I don't want to. So you do have to set a time. And it could be ambiguous, like, I do want to talk about it, but just not right now. Definitely in the future, in the near future. I'm not really sure yet when, but leave me alone. That's okay. And that should be allowed by both people.
You just be here with me and have this conversation.
I get that you're ready. I'm not.
There's a possibility that he is capable of having the conversation, but doesn't want to because he doesn't want to face the music. He doesn't want to face the fact that he cheated and that he disappeared and that he might have done bad things last night. I don't know. He might be trying to manage the fact that the cameras are here and he doesn't want to be humiliated in front of the cameras. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities that we can add to the list of possibilities.
I made mistakes. It still felt like it was
please look at me in the face
experience
right now.
I'm doing the best here.
I think I deserve a little bit more.
Okay, so he's rising to the occasion. He says, I made some mistakes. And she's like, look at me in the face. And he says, I'm doing my best. But then he, rises to the occasion, looks her in the eye, I think, or at least faces her. So starting out, I think, promising. Let's see what happens.
What I did was wrong, but I was doing it because of the experience and what you asked for me, and I wasn't getting that from April. So I did go outsource and find that stuff. Okay, she could take issue with that, but that does provide more context, and I could see that perspective. You would think he would tell Madeline that this is what he's going to do, and it all could be just some elaborate excuse and lie. But, it's reasonable. He is, I think, saying, I am giving you the ultimatum. I wanted to marry you. And then we both went on this show and you wanted me to actually try it out with someone else to really make sure that I want to be with you. And when I was dating April, it just wasn't really happening with her. And so I thought, well, maybe if I dated someone else, I mean, what does it matter if it's April or someone else? So I went out and I met someone and we did flirt and we did sort of date. And, this happened that, I only saw her in person a couple times. We never had sex, whatever. And yeah, there were flirty texts and whatnot, but I never really thought it was going to go anywhere. I was just doing what we were supposed to be doing. I just wasn't doing it with April. I was doing it with this other person. In the end, I was like, yeah, I did the experiment. And at the end of it, I know I want to be with you. I think that's what he's saying. Now, I would hope he would say, I'm so sorry that I deceived you. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you that I was going to do that. I think I was worried you were going to be upset at me, and that's wrong. I should have just come forward until I knew that I was going outside of the expectations at least a little bit. So that's wrong of me. I shouldn't have done that. Let's see what he says.
I did it for Madeline. I did it because Madeline asked of these things, not necessarily to go out and find someone and kiss them, but to make things real, to make sure that my love for her isn't some fairy tale, some dreamy thing that she is Miss Perfection. That's really the experience I was wanting to get out of this experience.
Now, what people will say is he's gaslighting right now. And I wouldn't go that far, but you could have an hypothesis that he's manipulative and lying, especially the way he words it. He's like, I got together with that woman because of you. Now he could word it more convincingly, like the way I was wording it earlier. But so you could argue that there's a good possibility that he's manipulative. He knows he did something wrong. He got caught cheating and he's trying to get out of it. He's trying to sneak out of it by saying, it's because of you. I did this because of you. And if you watch this and you have been cheated on, particularly if he reminds you of people that you've been with in the past who have cheated on you, and you interpreted it as your past partner was a psychopathic gaslighter, abusive person, then it would be tempting to displace your feelings toward that past relationship onto him. Me watching this, I don't know what's happening. There are some red flags of things, but I can't tell exactly what's happening because I don't know what the agreement was. It all depends on what was the agreement between him and Madeline and what was reasonable to conclude that was okay to do, and how bad it was that he did that, and how she takes it. She could say, well, I was actually flirting with someone else too as well. So, but I don't want to tell him because I don't feel it's relevant. Now, having said all that, is it possible, like I've been saying from the beginning, that he's a dirtbag and there are clear signs of that right now, and that a good portion of the audience watching this is correctly concluding that he's a dirtbag and a liar and a terrible human being? Yeah, maybe. There's a chance that a lot of the people on the show are that. There's also a chance that if we knew more information, we would understand more as to why he did what he did.
To confirm my love for Madeline, and that's exactly what Madeline asked for.
I told you about it, I'm ashamed of it, and I moved on from it.
But you didn't tell me that you were having, Colby.
Okay,
Did you tell me that you were having?
I'm really trying here, I'm so sorry.
You could look at this behavior and say it's manipulative. Let's get away from the gaslighting term because that's a much harder thing to evaluate when we're watching a show like this, but we can use words like knowingly manipulative or inadvertently manipulative, or motivated reasoning is another word, or in denial. So let's analyze this because I think this is what people will almost always say he's gaslighting right now. I don't really care necessarily about people misusing the term, other than I'm protective of people that actually have been gaslit and feel very hurt when people just throw that word around. But I'm mostly concerned about our ability to understand and conceptualize why people do what they do, because it's easy to look at him, and I think the internet or the viewing audience has a tendency to just look at him and say basically he has no empathy and he's a manipulative, horrible human being who is a psychopath, doesn't have remorse, that kind of thing. And it's possible, but it's not likely. There's a lot of people who will look at their partners or who will look at past partners, people in their life, and will jump to that conclusion. Psychopath, no remorse, no empathy. In fact, I will have couples who will come into my office and they will accuse each other of that when it's not the case. It's not a helpful perspective when it's not accurate. Sometimes it's accurate, but oftentimes it isn't. And it can lead to very hurtful perspectives, very hurtful behavior. If you believe that your partner has no empathy for you, that's really going to, when they do actually have empathy for you, that's really going to hamper things, hinder your relationship. So let's rewatch this scene and let's really break down the possibilities that are likely going on with Colby. Let's rewatch.
My love for Madeline, and that's exactly what Madeline asked for.
I told you about it, I'm ashamed of it, and I moved on from it.
But you didn't tell me that you were having. Colby.
Okay,
Did you tell me that you were having?
I'm really trying here, I'm so sorry.
All right. So he says, I told you about it, I'm ashamed of it, and I'm moving forward. Now, if I were there, I would say, whoa. Let's take one at a time. You're kind of speeding through this right now. Okay, you're claiming you told her about it. Let's dig into that. She would say, you didn't tell me about it. I found out about it on your phone. All right, so Colby, can you acknowledge that reality? Now, when you look at this from the outside, you're like, he's trying to manipulate her. He's trying to trick her into believing that he's fine, that he didn't do anything wrong, that he told her about it. And she's like, wait, you did not tell me about it. Now, if he went on a campaign to break her down, to really convince her that she can't gauge reality, and she starts to actually question, well, wait, did he tell me about it? Maybe I am crazy. That's gaslighting. But when one is, so let's say that he knows, so there are two dimensions, there are two realms to live in, two possibilities, two major categories. One is that he knows he did something wrong, he knows he didn't tell her, and he says, I told you about it, and he knows that he's lying, okay? The other category is he doesn't know that he's lying, okay? Or he doesn't know that he's wrong. In the realm that he knows that he's lying, there's a possibility he's a psychopath, but there's another possibility that he is just trying to spin it in a way where he is no longer in trouble and he can retain her love, because he's stated, and it's hard to know, but I think it's genuine, that he actually doesn't want to lose her. He wants to be with her. So if he has a tendency of lying to people and just trying to sneak out of trouble by just pathologically lying, and he knows he's lying, then that would be a conceptualization that would lead to that happening. If he doesn't know that he's lying, there's a possibility, and we all do this, that he is in his head convincing himself that he didn't do anything wrong because he's ashamed of himself, and he has a hard time accepting that he did something bad. And because to accept that, you have to shame yourself. It can be very hard to accept the things that we've done, and we all do this. Whenever we do something wrong to other people, particularly our partners, we have a almost universal tendency to frame the situation that makes us not look bad to ourselves. We'll say like, well, I only said that because this, or I never said that. And your partner's like, yes, you did say that. And you literally don't remember saying that because you've gotten rid of it in your memory because it's too hard to acknowledge that you said those things. We all do that. So is that what's happening? And if we break down all of the things that happen, he says, I told you, I'm ashamed of it. Okay, so that's good. He's saying, I'm ashamed of it. It's going in the direction. I'm guessing if he truly is ashamed of it, then it's hard for him to really open himself up and say, I'm ashamed of it and I'm so sorry, and to look right at her and just lay it all out and say, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did that. I have a weakness, or I'm selfish. I wasn't thinking about your feelings and I'm ashamed of it. Just saying you're ashamed of it, it's hard to know, well, what are you ashamed of? Are you really ashamed of it? Or are you just saying it? It's hard to know based on the way he's presenting it. Then he says, and I'm moving on. I already told you, I'm ashamed of it, and I'm moving. Now, another possibility is that he's saying, I already told you because we talked about it last night after you discovered it on the phone. Maybe he's, there's a possibility that he's saying that. And then he says, but I'm moving forward. Okay, so that isn't a helpful statement to say, because obviously she hasn't moved on from it. And you're just saying, look, I moved on from it, so what's wrong with you? It's like punching someone in the face and they come up to you and say, hey, you punched me in the face. They're like, hey, I'm ashamed of it, but I'm already moving on. So what are you talking about? It's like, you can't do that to someone. And that is what the internet will call gaslighting, what we're going to call manipulative or wishful thinking, or bulldozing someone with your own self-serving perspective. Maybe that's a way of describing it. And then she says, but you didn't tell me about it. That's a pretty big acknowledgement that we're going to have to talk about right there. And then he's like, oh, here we go again. And he is exhibiting displeasure as if he's like, you're unreasonable. What's wrong with you? Now, if he really doubled down on this behavior over time and she was susceptible to being influenced in that way, then this could result in an ongoing dynamic that could result in gaslighting, where she's looking at him because he's not acknowledging reality. He is exhibiting a very self-centered or self-aggrandizing, self-serving narrative of like, here you go again, you're ridiculous. I already told you about this. We're moving forward. What's wrong with you? But she seems strong enough, I think, to be able to hold on to her own perspective and state it and assert it. Now, for some people, they're very susceptible to gaslighting because they were abused growing up and they were taught that they're not worth it. They might have been even gaslit when they were children by their own parents and are already not confident in their own ability to gauge reality. They meet an abusive person and that person proceeds to do this and much more, and over time you start to you don't assert yourself because you're already thinking, well, I'm not a very reliable narrator in general, and then down the line the other person has all this power and knows how to manipulate the other person. So I'm glad we're able to talk about this because we often don't get to talk about the distinctions that I'm laying out. Let's see if we get some more data to talk about.
I know. Okay, but like you're just saying that you told me, but you didn't. Like I need you to own up that you didn't tell me.
I didn't tell you that I told that girl the frustrations I was having what I was going through.
Yikes. So she's like asserting, I need you to acknowledge reality that you didn't tell me that you got together with a second woman and you had this ongoing flirting relationship at the very least for the past few weeks. I need you to acknowledge that you didn't tell me that. You just claimed you told me. I need you to acknowledge that. And then he says, yeah, you're right. I didn't tell you that I needed someone to confide in. So it's a pretty big yikes, right? It'd be pretty easy for him to say, yeah, you're right. I didn't tell you and I should have, and that's wrong. I'll tell you the reason why. It's not an excuse for lying to you, but I needed someone to confide in because I didn't have you anymore, and me and April weren't really hitting it off. And so I don't know. I knew it was going to be a temporary thing, and it just felt good to have a friend in my corner during that time. He could say that. It doesn't excuse the lying, but the way he phrased it, right? And I get why people would say that this is gaslighting, because of the things we've seen, it's one of the few examples that's kind of in that direction.
Something
Forward,
to take up
I will
with me.
not do that ever again.
You're becoming more patronizing and you're making me want to walk out of this without you because I think I would be better for it.
I think you'd be better too.
Pretty cold presentation. It's interesting to see this side of him. But we've seen this with other cast members on this show when they're distressed. I think for Colby, if we were to know his physiology and have, hook him up to a bunch of measuring devices, that I'm taking a guess, I don't know, that he would be in high distress right now, that he is very worried he's going to lose her. The way that he copes with high distress is to shut down his emotions and to be very cold and to resort to what in the clinical world we'll call a narcissistic coping mechanism, which is very different from the way the internet talks about it, which is to say, I don't need anyone, I'm fine on my own, look at her, she's ridiculous, I'm okay, everything's fine, because it's a defense against rejection, which these people often have experienced throughout their life. That's an hypothesis that's happening. Another hypothesis is that he's a dirtbag, psychopathic, horrible person, and he never loved her and is manipulative, and now that he's caught, he is like, fine, I'm caught, go away, I never loved you anyway because I'm a jerk face.
I'm trying so hard and I deserve more.
You deserve a lot more than me. I'm not worth it.
I'm going to take a guess and say that the cameras are a big part of what's happening right now, and she's being pretty reasonable and pretty constructive, or at least creating a space for constructive communication to happen, because I'm pretty sure that if he were to say, Madeline, you're right, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, and I was in a vulnerable place, I kind of wanted to tell you, but I just was stupid. I should have told you, and you're right, I'm wrong. There's an explanation as to why I did it, and I don't really consider it cheating because we did have the agreement, but I should have told you, and that's lying, and that's wrong. And certainly that must have been awful to come across those texts. I'm guessing that she was open to that conversation. I don't know. And instead, he is doing this sort of thing where he's like, yeah, I'm a terrible person. It's a passive aggression. It's sarcasm. You're agreeing in a way that is a hostile attack. Like, you're right. You're always right. I'm a horrible person. Go ahead and believe that. It's that kind of thing. And so a conceptualization of him is that he is high distress right now. He is caught, or he feels caught in a lie, and he is ashamed, really, and he's terrified he's going to lose her. It's very easy to look at people who present like this, like Colby does, and conclude they don't have any emotions and they don't care. And certainly there are a percentage of people that are like that. But the vast majority of people who present like this, they deeply care. They are deeply worried about losing people. They are deeply needy of close relationships and attachments. But their coping style with threat is to protect the self by acting tough and by trying to gain the upper hand, especially if a bunch of cameras are filming and they think they have to show that they are above it all, that they're superior. Like, I didn't really care anyway. Yeah, go ahead, just leave me, whatever. So that would be my guess. That would be my hypothesis, if for in whatever weird universe they came in to be treated, that would be my initial hypothesis that I would begin to test.
Okay, but you're not worth it, but it's still my fault that everything happened.
Yes.
Now, I will say, if you're Madeline, this can be very crazy making, because if you don't have a lot of outside support, if you've been through a lot of traumatization yourself and might have some self-esteem issues, whatever, you're just two people in a room and you're interacting with someone and you feel like, wait, I feel like something happened that was wrong and I feel entitled to have him apologize, but he's acting like I'm being unreasonable. Is there something wrong with me? I'm sure a lot of you have been in those shoes before, and it's what people will call gaslighting. It might be, but it's more likely that it's a defense mechanism in your partner that is making you very confused, and it can be very hurtful, obviously, and can make you start to second guess, am I the weird one? And that's a normal part of being in a relationship, because when we have conflict, it's very normal that we will, especially in the beginning, to have a different point of view. You're wrong. No, you're wrong. Okay, that's almost universal. Like when I was watching Ethan and Trisha on The Frenemies, they both accuse each other of gaslighting because they were both saying, I'm right, you're wrong, and Trisha saying, I'm right, you're wrong. And we all do that, right? And you, from your side, you're like, you are distorted. There's something wrong with your point of view. You're trying to trick me into believing it's my fault when I know it's not my fault, when in reality, it's probably a more accurate or more wise perspective that really neither person is wrong or both people are partially to blame. So it's possible that he's exhibiting that side of things while she isn't in this moment. You know what I'm saying? Where she actually is mostly right in this situation, and he's like convinced, like, I'm not wrong, she's wrong, because we all kind of do that. And if you've been particularly relationally traumatized, you might be very convinced for a long period of time that it's never your fault consciously, while underneath it all, you believe everything is your fault because that's the way you were treated growing up.
I'm not cool with what he's done. I'm extremely hurt by it. No matter how tired, sick, hurt I felt, I would go out of my way to make sure that I gave my partner what they needed to feel okay and move on. And I'm just disappointed that Colby wasn't able to do that for me.
Yeah, if Madeline is questioning the relationship, that would make a lot of sense. Now, maybe they'll have other conversations that will be much more constructive in the future, maybe after he rests or something. It's possible. But if I were Madeline and I saw my partner doing this, yeah, I would be pretty concerned, because I wouldn't assume, given my knowledge base, that he was a psychopath, but I would be very concerned that he had the kind of defenses that would result in very hurtful behavior. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.